What if the more you try to be kind, understanding, and easy to get along with, the less people actually respect you? It sounds unfair, almost contradictory to everything most people are taught. Be nice. Be polite. Be considerate. These qualities are supposed to improve relationships, not weaken them. And yet, many people eventually notice something that doesn't quite make sense. The more accommodating they become, the more others begin to overlook their need. The more flexible they are, the more they are taken for granted. The more they avoid conflict, the less seriously they are treated. This is not because kindness is a problem. It is because how kindness is expressed can change how it is interpreted. One of the most important distinctions is the difference between kindness and self-neglect. Kindness involves consideration for others, but it does not require the removal of your own boundaries. When boundaries disappear, behavior changes in a subtle but significant way. Your time becomes more available than it should be. Your preferences become less visible. Your limits become unclear. And when these signals are repeated over time, others begin to adjust their expectations accordingly. They may not consciously decide to respect you less, but they begin treating your presence as something flexible rather than something defined. Another factor involves perceived value. In many social dynamics, value is influenced not only by what you offer, but by how limited that offering appears to be. When something is constantly available, it is often perceived as less valuable. This applies to time, attention, and emotional support. If you are always available, always agreeable, and always accommodating, others may begin to assume that your availability has no cost. As a result, they stop evaluating it as something that requires consideration. Over time, this reduces the weight of your presence in interactions. Emotional positioning also plays a role. When someone consistently prioritizes others' comfort over their own, it creates an imbalance in interaction. The focus shifts away from mutual exchange and toward one-sided accommodation. This imbalance changes how others engage. Instead of seeing the interaction as equal, they begin seeing it as something that adjusts around them. This does not necessarily lead to appreciation. It often leads to expectation, and expectation, when repeated, becomes normalized behavior. Another subtle pattern involves conflict avoidance. Avoiding conflict may feel like maintaining harmony, but it can also remove an important signal. Conflict, when handled calmly and clearly, communicates boundaries, preferences, and self-respect. When conflict is consistently avoided, those signals are reduced. Others may not know where your limits are, and in the absence of clear limits, they may continue extending their behavior. Over time, this creates a dynamic where your comfort is not actively considered, not because others intend harm, but because no clear boundary has been established. There is also the issue of over-accommodation. When someone frequently adjusts themselves to fit others' expectations, they begin to lose a consistent identity within interactions. Their responses change depending on the situation, and while this may seem adaptive, it can reduce predictability. Predictability is an important component of respect. It allows others to understand where you stand and what to expect. Without it, your position becomes less defined, and as a result, less stable in perception. Another important element is internal messaging. Behavior communicates information even when nothing is said explicitly. When you repeatedly accept situations that do not align with your preferences, you are sending a signal, not through words, but through action. That signal suggests that your preferences are flexible, your limits are negotiable, and your needs are secondary. Others pick up on these signals over time, often without conscious awareness. And once a pattern is established, it tends to reinforce itself. The more you accommodate, the more others expect accommodation. The more others expect it, the more difficult it becomes to change the dynamic. As this pattern continues, the shift in how others perceive and treat you becomes more noticeable. One of the first changes is in how your time is valued. Requests may become more frequent, more urgent, or less considerate. Others may assume availability without asking, or expect agreement without discussion. This is not always intentional. It is often the result of repeated signals that suggested flexibility in the past. Over time, those signals shape expectation. Another noticeable shift occurs in communication dynamic. Your opinions may be acknowledged but not prioritized. Your preferences may be heard but not fully considered. Conversations may move forward without incorporating your perspective in a meaningful way. This does not necessarily reflect disagreement. It reflects a change in how much weight your input carries. When boundaries are unclear, input often becomes optional rather than influential. Emotional impact also begins to change. Situations that once felt balanced may start to feel one-sided. You may notice that you are giving more attention, more effort, or more understanding than you are receiving. This imbalance can create a sense of frustration, but it is often difficult to address because the pattern developed gradually. There is no single moment to point to, only a series of small adjustments that accumulated over time. Another important shift involves how others respond to resistance. When someone who is usually accommodating begins to set limits, the reaction can be unexpected. Others may question the change, push back, or interpret it as inconsistency. This reaction does not necessarily mean the new boundary is wrong. It reflects the difference between past expectations and present behavior. When patterns change, there is often a period of adjustment. During this period, consistency becomes important. Boundaries are not established through single actions, but through repeated behavior. Over time, consistent signals begin to reshape perception. Respect is not restored through explanation alone. It is rebuilt through patterns that demonstrate stability, clarity, and alignment between words and actions. Another transformation occurs internally. As you begin to adjust your behavior, your sense of self-positioning changes. You no longer approach interactions from a place of automatic accommodation. You begin evaluating where to engage, how much to give, and when to maintain your position. This shift creates a more balanced dynamic. Instead of adjusting to every situation, you begin defining how you participate in it. Over time, this changes not only how others perceive you, but also how you experience interaction. Ultimately, the issue is not kindness itself. Kindness, when combined with clarity and boundaries, strengthens relationship. The problem arises when kindness replaces boundaries rather than working alongside them. When that happens, the signals being communicated shift. Others begin interpreting flexibility as lack of definition and accommodation as lack of limit. By understanding this distinction, you gain the ability to express kindness without reducing your position. And when kindness is supported by clear boundaries, it is more likely to be respected rather than overlooked.